the athlete in you lives forever, and
Yeah.
you tap into it in different ways. Sometimes you tap into it through business, sometimes you tap into it through leadership, work ethic. I
Yeah.
want to be the best. We would always talk about, like, hard hat mentality and bring your lunchbox. We were never like going out to five-star restaurants. We were going to be the team. We were going to be a hardworking team.
Sports taught you how to compete, how to lead, how to push past limits when no one was watching. But what happens when the season ends, when the uniform comes off and the identity shifts? Welcome to the Beyond Her Game podcast. I'm Tori Barker, former Division I softball player and founder of Beyond Her Game. Athletes are trained to pursue excellence and lead under pressure, but no one prepares us for life when the game changes. This podcast is for female athletes building what comes next. We talk about business, brand, money, mindset, and identity beyond sports. The things no one teaches you in the locker room. Because the skills you built through sports don't disappear. They're just the beginning. Welcome to Beyond Her Game. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again on the podcast. I am super excited to introduce you to my guest, Kathy Taylor. Kathy, how are you?
I'm doing great, Tori. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I am really excited to jump right in, and I'd love for you to tell us just a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, yeah. So I'm going to be celebrating my 64th birthday this summer. But in all those years, I was an athlete first, probably a child athlete, and then a teenage and college athlete. Played in multiple sports, not just one. I mean, I spent a lot of time in the game of lacrosse once I graduated as a coach. But I think I really identified with the athlete within. With the shared locker room experiences with my teammates, striving to do things at a high level. And so when I graduated from Cornell University, I didn't know what my next step was going to be. I had a college degree and thought I was going to get a job, but I actually had children young, and I found myself looking for something that was fulfilling, that I could really relate to for myself.
Yeah.
And sports always called me back, and an opportunity to coach. So I kind of grew up on high school sidelines as a lacrosse coach after playing in college, and it was 18 years at high school, and then I had several 6 years at Division III, 5 years at Division II, and 5 years at Division I, and that
Wow.
helped me get to 64. And all
That's
those kids
amazing.
grew up. All those
Yeah.
kids grew up, and now I have 7 grandchildren.
Oh my gosh, what an amazing journey. I've been so excited and honored to connect with you and learn a little bit about your history and your journey. And so I'd like for you to share, because I know that you've coached for more than 30 years or 30 plus years, right?
Yes.
So what have you learned about female athletes through sports that most people may have never seen?
It was such a privilege to grow up at the time that I did, because I was just on the wake of Title IX in a small school where they really got behind the girls being able to compete and opportunities for them. So, there's a lot of people that are a little bit older than I that don't remember that as well, but I remember every opportunity that was given to me. And in coaching through the years, as more and more opportunities given to girls and women to compete and play, in so many athletic endeavors. What I've learned is the female athlete is a sensitive athlete. She is a hardworking athlete. She wants to please. Um, I don't know why, but I feel as if they can believe in their leader. If they have a belief system that the leader is going to help them get better and knows where they're taking them, they will follow. And I think they listen a little bit better than the boys. But I've had 2 daughters and 1 son, so I'm a little biased.
It's interesting you talk about when you grew up, the time how women's sports was different then versus now. And it's so interesting too because, I grew up, I was in college in the early 2000s, but I remember talking to my mom because my mom was a middle school coach for a couple different sports, and she would tell me often about Title IX, and she didn't have the opportunity to play sports when she was in high school, and there weren't that many opportunities, and so I've always kind of heard these lessons, and more, I don't know what it is, just circumstance. I keep hearing these conversations about that generation, your generation of women growing up who, have, paved the way for these young athletes. And some of these athletes just don't even understand what opportunities they have.
Well, I
And
mean,
yeah,
that is so true. I did not mean to interject, but it is so
no,
true. I just want to
yeah.
validate that, understand, or sometimes even appreciate, Tori,
Hmm.
the opportunities that kids in general have
Absolutely.
now have in the world of sport.
Yeah.
Um, you have young boys. I have the grandchildren, and I mean, they have their names on the back of their jerseys. There's nothing new and exciting. They stay in hotels when they travel to games.
Yes.
The
Yes.
privilege that young children are having, you just want to make sure that they always appreciate it.
Yeah, and I was like thinking about, it's funny you mentioned my boys because my boys are in baseball right now and that's like their big sport, and thinking about, travel ball and even just like equipment. Think about sports stores
Mm.
now versus back then. Like we can walk into a sports store that is like warehouse size full of all of these equipment pieces, shiny and,
Yeah,
colorful and like so much out there. And I'm thinking like, gosh, when I was a kid, I had to look in a magazine to pick out a bat. And that was
absolutely.
the
And
same
one
bat.
bat.
Yeah, one bat, the same bat that I used for what, 5, 7 years. I think I still have my bat.
Of course, of course. I think I went to college without cleats, because my high school supplied them. And,
Yeah.
it was just a very different time, and it's good. I mean, I really am an advocate of children growing up playing competitive sports if that opportunity. I hope all kids have that opportunity, no matter
Absolutely.
where it takes them, because you learn so many great lessons that are just really hard to teach in the classroom or even in the home.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what qualities do you think those successful athletes have or share that are in common with other athletes?
The really successful athletes that I have found are probably intrinsically more motivated than
Mm,
extrinsically. I
yeah,
think we in coaching very often, or even parenting or teaching or whatever, we try to motivate children extrinsically with reward systems, and if you do this you can get this, um, and sometimes I think that's very effective. I really do.
yeah,
I think especially if it's a group goal where everybody has to rally around and pull their weight, it really starts to add value to that motivation. And so I think you can nudge it and teach it, but the really great ones just, they play when everybody is moved on to something else. They're
yeah.
just always thinking about not what they didn't do well, but what they could do better. And they're very demanding of self.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, those qualities are going to carry over even outside of sports, right? So if you're self-motivated and you know that, your coach says that you have to work hard and you have to do your best and all those things, but then when the team practice ends and you go home and you think about what can I do to improve myself to give back to my team so that we can all contribute better, those
Yes.
skill sets carry over so far to make you successful adults. And so you're absolutely right because I think, that is just puts you over the top as, not only do you want to be coachable, do you want to be, a great leader, great teammate, but you also have to have your own self-motivation to, want to contribute and make yourself better for your
Yeah.
teammates.
The motivation and the discipline. I mean, I
Mm,
think there's some people that are so motivated, but it's hard, sometimes it's hard to be disciplined and be
yeah.
consistently disciplined. I always used to say to so many athletes, it's not like going out for 2 hours on a Saturday and working on your game. It's really going out for 15 minutes, 5 times a week in working on
Yeah.
your game. You
Yeah.
can do less, but more regularly so that that learning builds upon itself.
Mm.
And so I think that is where it is versus put the bat in the corner and pick it up on the
Yeah.
weekend
Yes. Well,
or
and
the
I think,
lacrosse stick, you know?
yeah, whatever ball,
Yeah,
whatever
right.
equipment piece. And I think, it's, we talk about the athlete as the individual, but I think that there's also the coaches play such a huge role in setting expectations, um, empowering them, encouraging them, giving them those skill sets to take and, implement on their own. And so, what do you think that, coaches maybe underestimate about their impact that they have on their team or their athletes?
Yeah, I think I believe that really good coaches don't underestimate their impact. They realize how much the words that come out of their mouth affect them,
Mm.
how much um, they explain what they're doing, and that the athlete themselves believes that the coach really cares.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, when they know someone cares, they are willing to do. Um, Not only for themselves, but for the person who is getting behind them. So a
Yeah.
coach can really change lives.
Mm.
Um, and on the other side of that, it's a huge responsibility because a coach can also, do harm. And
Mm.
and sometimes it's an unintentional harm. It's
Yeah.
it's you don't know what is going on in the mind of every young athlete that you coach. But for the most part, I think that coaches know that they really are an important piece in this child's life or young adult's life.
Hmm.
And hopefully there's more and more coaches think like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I'd love to hear your perspective since you coached both high school and college. What approach maybe did you take differently at each level, or um, what did you try to like? Did you have a different, way of coaching at the high school level than college? I mean, I kind of think I know the answer to that, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I think that interesting enough, I was always wondering when I did make the jump to college, I spoke to a lot of my successful high school athletes playing in college.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, is my coaching gig like, can it work in college? Because I don't know how to become somebody new and different. And I mean, I can definitely, change on the margins a little bit, but I'm not going to be all of a sudden go to college and then different. I always felt that a lot of the success that we had at every different level was because I coached very inclusively. I
Mm.
believed in developing every athlete, whether they were going to play in the game or not. They were supposed to get better, just like the All Americans are supposed to get better.
Yeah.
Everybody had to work hard, and everybody had to pull their weight, carry the balls, set up the goals. Like we really didn't have a star system. It was based on servant leadership.
Mm.
So I
Yeah.
took that model that I developed at the high school level that was very successful and culturally. Young girls really wanted to be a part of our program and always reflect back on the lessons learned and now they're in business doing great things and in the military and leading companies and they'll always say, coach, I mean, we played for you. So we had a hardworking program,
Yeah.
but everybody worked hard and we worked hard so that we could be successful. And
Yeah.
I always said that, I mean, do I feel better if I see them working hard? Feel better when I see them be successful. So
Yeah.
part of success in athletics is the grind.
Mm.
And so we were a hardworking culture, and we took that to college and had a lot of success there too, where leaders were expected to do a little bit more, and those who were talented or older were expected to help the younger players, but
Yeah.
nobody got a free pass.
No. No, they shouldn't. No, that's not what you
Right.
signed up for.
Exactly.
Well, and I think it's
Couldn't agree
interesting.
more.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, like as a coach to know and understand that you're coaching individuals for a common goal too. I think that's something that is
Yeah.
maybe overlooked as a coach, that what works for one athlete doesn't work for the other. Like there's some athletes who are motivated by, one thing, and the others are motivated by other, but you all have the common goal. And so knowing as a coach how to speak to your athletes, how to push a little harder on this one who needs it, how to, pull someone aside if they need a quiet moment to talk, like there's different personalities. And so it's so interesting to have, coaches understand that and use that to their advantage to build that common goal and the culture so that you all support each other. And I think that's really important in the coaching space too.
Yes, I think that, so I have a school counseling degree, and I do believe that I coached based on a family system. And
Mm.
I've said this a couple times to people, and they're like, "Well, what do you mean family system?" And I said, "Well, in a family system, the older kids have to do more to help the younger kids. Everything that was done for the firstborn can't always be done exact same for the second or the third. Um, some people get sick, and people have to cancel things, and sometimes it's one game for one kid and the other kid has to get dragged along.
Yeah.
You help out in you so many different ways to develop a healthy family system where everybody is valued and has different strengths, but the group is to make it run smoothly. So, and
Yeah.
understanding that some days you're the star, and some days you're just the role player.
Yeah.
And I think that really was very helpful, and people really loved belonging to it. It didn't replace my family. I've never really called a team a family, but I did lead based on a healthy family system
Yeah.
of experience and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a great, approach and concept, because it totally makes sense if you think about it, from that perspective of, supporting when somebody is a little bit under the weather or can't quite get there, or like you said, one's the star today and one's the cheerleader. Like you have to play different roles, and that's how it is with a family, and a team dynamic often becomes that, core, closeness similar to a family. So it's really interesting.
Yeah. So there's always some, and this is where you say the difference with coaching, like what did I find with coaching girls and women?
Yeah.
But, there were some that were so buttoned up, and they kind of took care of the ones that weren't as buttoned up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The ones that like were sprinting to make the bus and they didn't have a snack. Well, you know what? Her friend or someone on the team brought her a snack, or she
Yeah.
forgot her penny, or whatever. There's always a couple that
Yeah.
are, just out there. But the team took care of each other in
Yeah.
all of the places that I was.
I love
So,
that. Well, I
yeah.
want to transition a little bit to talk about transition and identity beyond sports, because I think that for me, that's a huge core part of, my message is really understanding that, yes, once an athlete, always an athlete, but you are still more than your sport. And so I'd love to hear your perspective on how you helped prepare your athletes to know, your career is going to end either by choice, by injury, by retirement, whatever it might be, but you still have all of these lessons and experience to take with you. I'd love to hear how you approach that as a coach.
I think so much of it was handled in real time
Mm.
in experiences and upon their reflections as they got older. But a large part of the discussion was, of course, you are all like the athlete in you lives forever, and
Yeah.
you tap into it in different ways. Sometimes you tap into it through business, sometimes you tap into it through leadership, work ethic.
Yeah.
I want to be the best. We would always talk about, like, hard hat mentality and bring your lunchbox. We were never like going out to five-star restaurants. We were going to be the team. We were going to be a hardworking team, and we weren't punching a clock, though. We were punching a clock. So we had a lot of that type of stuff, and I think those things go through so many of the women that I've had a privilege of coaching. The lessons learned. That the goal is for all of us to succeed, and when you have a team goal and someone is struggling, the team has to pull harder.
Yeah.
because we're not leaving anyone behind. We're taking everybody's taking this journey. So we got to push sometimes, we got to pull sometimes, but we move together. And I think it taught a lot of empathy too,
Mm.
because the players on the team sometimes that were older and had seniority and had and the players that had ability had to assist or help everybody get there,
Yeah.
because that was such an important culture. And so as these young women went into like raising their own families or going into work, they were taking that type of thinking with them, that
Hmm.
some days I'm going to have to do more.
Yeah.
Life is not a 50-50 deal.
Yeah. So true.
We know that.
We know that. It's taken years to get to that understanding, but
It's not
uh,
even an understanding, it's just an acceptance. But like
acceptance,
the
yes,
girls,
exactly.
they learned it early. It's that,
Yeah.
some days you just have to pull 70%.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, the more conversations I have, the more important I feel that it is to have, be open about those, moments of, gosh, like I I wish I was still playing sports, or I miss playing sports, and like having that team culture and like all of those things, and then helping them understand that, maybe that sport has ended, but you can still have your team culture, you can have your routines, like all of these different things that you take from sports and carry into your adulthood, building your own tribe, if you will, and,
Yes.
working hard and grinding and work ethic and all of that
Yeah.
stuff. It's just amazing to know that you can carry that over. And so it's like making sure that these young athletes know this is not just the end. This is just going to follow you wherever you go, and you're just going to apply it to different aspects of your life. So, that's something that I'm passionate about, obviously helping
Yeah.
young athletes and former athletes as they grow and mature and
And
all of
find
those
and you
things.
know what, finding, like you said, your tribe, your team, but seeking it out, being honest about the loss
Yes.
that's missing. It's not like a loss. It was good time. It filled you up. So you're
Yeah.
looking for something that fills you up. And
Yeah.
sometimes you have to try a few things.
True.
I fascinate at the athletes that I coach that grumbled and grumbled and grumbled about the running. Oh my God, coach, you just make us run, 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 run. And they're out running marathons all the
Yeah.
time, and they're sending me their times, and they just got a PR, and I just like, oh my gosh, like, it's fascinating, girls, fascinating.
You're like, I'm so glad I made you run those laps.
I know. Do you remember when you complained incessantly about that? But they find doing something else that they're really drawn to,
Yeah.
because so many of them loved it, and they loved their
Mm.
teammates that they did different things with. So they have get-togethers. I'll get different groups of pictures where they all got together, with whether it's weddings or just a reunion for fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's been very, very, um, how do I say it? Just really, really pleases me and makes me happy to see these groups get together after they've played together.
Yeah. I love that. Well, okay, we're gonna wrap this up with two final questions for you.
Sure.
So the first question is, tell me one word that defines great leadership.
Service, servant
Ooh.
leadership.
Ooh, I love that. Okay. And then the last question is the hardest coaching lesson that you've learned.
I think the toughest coaching lesson that I learned is that sometimes you can run into something that you can't fix. You can run into a couple of really difficult players or parents that just have decided that you're not the right person. And try as you may, and you've gotten through a lot in your life, sometimes you just can't fix it. And that was really hard. That was my final chapter.
Mm. Well, Kathy, it has been amazing talking to you. And like I said at the beginning, I just feel honored to have met you and learned about your story and get to speak with you today and share that message with my audience. How can people get in touch with you if they want to connect, learn more about you, just want to, be in touch?
Yeah, I mean, that would just make me so happy. But I do have a profile on LinkedIn and I also do have a website. It's kathytaylorlacrosse.com. So it's Kathy lacrosse at Taylor, Taylor, lacrosse.com. Kathytaylorlacrosse.com. And I have
Awesome.
some I enjoyed this so much and I have a couple other podcasts and some writings that I've done if people are interested.
I love that. Well, thank you again for being a guest, and thank you for your time and sharing your story.
Thank you, Tori. I've really enjoyed it.